Hi everyone, I'm Scott Rogers and I'm looking forward to our semester together exploring mindfulness in law. This is a class that I love to teach. I love sharing mindfulness, integrating it into the fabric of the law, exploring it together so we can share ideas and learn from each other. It's something that I've done for many years, originally as a student of mindfulness when I was a student, much as you are. And then of course it's journeyed with me in this explicit, formal way of study and practice for the better part of the last 30 years. And so together we'll further that journey for myself and for you all. There's the science of mindfulness, which we'll talk about. And I do some research in half of the last decade on the science of mindfulness and looking for changes to the structure and function of the brain and other indicators of attention, etc., in relationship to mindfulness practice. And in many ways, we will be our own researchers and subjects, and we'll be gathering data. This is an important part of our class. We are gathering data. We are coming to have a little bit of a greater understanding of ourselves and others and the world around us, greater sense of self-awareness, whatever that might mean, a greater capacity to be present for the moments of our lives, to really be here, especially when what's happening isn't the kinds of things that we would like to be happening. And of course, we're entering into the practice, the practice of law, of resolving conflicts, and oftentimes that is not the place that many people want to find themselves. And yet we're volunteering in many ways to say, let me help, let me help. And this mindfulness can be helpful in that regard. Now, as it relates to being a scientist and the subject and gathering data, I think it can be helpful at the very outset to gather some data. So here's 3 short experiments that I'd like you to do between now and when we get together in class, and to come with your answers to these 3 questions written down so that we can talk about it in class and in the days to come. As you probably expect, we'll be doing mindfulness exercises or practices that involve things like lowering or closing the eyes and paying attention to an object like the breath for a period of time. Some of you may have done this already and will be learning it and perhaps refining your understanding of it, or doing it in different sorts of ways, or perhaps for different sorts of reasons. And some of you, it's brand new and never done this before. But often we don't really have a baseline set of information as to, before we even got into this enterprise, where were we in this sitting with our eyes lowered or closed and, paying attention to something as the primary objective? So this week, set aside 20 minutes maybe. You won't need more than 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes at the most. And have a watch with you or a cell phone with a timer so that you're able to keep track of time, because you'll be making note of 3 different times. That's the data you'll be looking at. And now I'd like to briefly explain what you'll be doing. First, find a place that's relatively quiet or let people know not to interrupt you. And then have the timer in front of you and have a piece of paper where you can make notes so you don't forget. And then set the timer, lower or close your eyes, whichever you prefer, but don't look at the timer. And see how long it takes for you to begin to have thoughts. And whenever you begin to notice, oh, I'm having thoughts, I'm thinking about something, stop the timer or look up, look at the timer, and then write down how much time passed before you began to notice thoughts arising. So that's the first experiment. Then set the timer back to 0, and then for the second experiment, start the timer, lower or close your eyes again. You can be in any position you want. And keep track as best you can, but without counting or anything, of the passage of 3 minutes. And when you think 3 minutes has passed, but really, this isn't like get this right, it's a contest. It's like, when do you intuitively think 3 minutes has passed? And when you say to yourself, I think that's been about 3 minutes, look down, see the time, write it down. That's the second experiment. And then start the timer again. And the third and final experiment involves starting the timer, lowering or closing your eyes, whichever you prefer, and then sitting there with nothing to do. There's no instruction. If you have some instruction, like you're used to doing this a certain way and you can't help yourself, that's fine. But really, it's just sort of sit there. Just sit. And when you get to the point where you're like, this is enough, I'm getting a little restless, I'm getting a little bored, I'm getting a little anxious, I'm feeling uncomfortable, just when you get to the edge of this is enough, whatever that might be for you. Not, I can't do this anymore, this is unbearable. It's not going to get to that. But and you can always make it a little longer in all likelihood. So it's not like push the envelope here. To the contrary, it's like, where does the envelope begin? And so when you get to that point where you're like, like what time is it and how long is this? And maybe now is the time. Just whatever that is for you. There's no, true indicators of this. You're like, this is a pretty good length of time to have just done this. Open your eyes, look at the time, and write that down. All right. I'm looking forward to seeing you. You do have the readings for this first class where there is a writing assignment that I would be grateful if you could get it in by Wednesday. Although if you're traveling or it's very, very difficult and you get it in Thursday or closer to Friday, that's fine too. I just look forward to reading these before class. They're very short readings. And I think that you'll find that if you allocate a half hour, 45 minutes, you probably could get the assignment done in an hour at the most. Alrighty, wishing you well, looking forward to seeing you on Friday. Take care.